who was a scientist who was reporting this and investigating this, actually, he was ridiculed for that. So much so that his brother became angry. And he went on determined to actually, get back, purify the name of the family. So he made some further excavations a decade later at a place called Miramar, which is on the coast of the Atlantic, Argentina's Atlantic coast. And he made actually many discoveries there of a human presence, many stone implements, and he found also one human bone. I think it's not mentioned here, but he found one the upper bone from the spine, which was from a human. He found evidence of fire, and it's all something like, probably date comes something like 2 to 3 million years back. One thing that he found was this particular bone. It's a thigh bone from an extinct South American animal called a toxodon, and this went extinct 2 million years back. So this bone is at least 2 million years old. And what was interesting about this particular thigh bone was that at the very top of the thigh bone there was an arrowhead implanted in the bone. You see that the arrow points there. So somehow or other, this animal was at least 2 million years old, had an arrowhead in its thigh bone. So someone was shooting arrows at least 2 million years ago in Argentina.
What's supposed to happen?
No. Again, and of course caused a lot of controversy. Here's a picture of Carlos Ameghino conducting these excavations. Again, and they caused a lot of stir all over in the ecological society in the Western world. They were criticized a lot, so much so that eventually, in order to actually, really investigate it, a whole committee of the leading archaeologists and geologists from Argentina and Brazil, they met and they were actually supervising the excavations by Carlos Ameghino. So here they have this committee of these learned scholars, geologists, archaeologists, and so on. And actually what happened here is that they have just uncovered in this, what is it called, Klinter, for English? Cliffs, kind of, cliffs, but not rock cliffs, but kind of, as you have by the oceans. What was it? Huh? Yeah, maybe it's like is it called a cliff, like a Dover that you have cliffs? Is that called? Yeah. Okay, so it's the cliffs. Yeah. And here actually, you can see just below the arrow actually, you can see something round. So some round stone, what appeared to them to be artificially made, has just appeared. So, but before they free it completely, then everyone was called and come please, and then the photographer took a picture of all these scientists and the stone. And then after that, they went on and digging and freed the stone. And actually what they found not only one, but they found 3. Behind that there was one more and one more stones like this. And they're called boulders. They are stones which have been chipped so they're round, and then there is a furrow down in the middle of the stone. And probably they were used as a sling weapon. You can tie, if you have 2 or 3 stones like that, you tie them together with a leather string, and then you hold one stone and you swing 1 or 2 other stones like this, and then you go, and then you have quite an effective weapon to catch minor animals like that. That's probably what they were. So that's pretty good evidence. We had all these big scientists. Most ecological discoveries are not found with so much control as this. And again, they are something like 2 to 3 million years old. And this was, what year? 1910, something like that. You remember that time? 1915. So it's the beginning of the 20th century. And yeah, now we go to another very famous, it's actually one of the most famous archaeological discoveries in the 20th century in Tanzania, Africa, in a place called Laitoli. And there, under the supervision of Mary Leakey and her team, they found in volcanic ash 56 footprints left by 3 individuals. What happened seems like it's a place where there was a volcanic eruption, volcanic ashes, and then there's these 3 individuals have walked in this volcanic ash, which could have been wet after some rain, and after that, then there is another volcanic eruption that covers and preserves these footprints. I found 56 footprints like that. 2 adults and 1 child. And these footprints, they are 3.6 million years old. They can be dated very precisely because they are found between 2 layers of volcanic ashes, and that can be dated quite precisely. So they are 3.6 million years old. And what's striking about them is that they are none different from our footprints, our modern human footprints. Mary Leakey herself wrote, "Laitoli footprints are indistinguishable from modern human footprints." And she wrote that in National Geographic. Tim White, who was on the team, who was actually the main one who was himself uncovering, really carefully freeing them. And he writes here, "Make no mistake about it, they are like modern human footprints." So then the question is, of course, who left these footprints? Now, Leakey and White, they're both evolutionists and Darwinists, so that Homo sapiens left is not an option for them. So it must have been someone like that, some creature which had mainly an ape-like body, walking upright, and had human feet like we have. And of course that is very possible. But such a being has never been found. That's the only thing. The creatures supposed to live to the human lineage, living around 3.6 million years ago, the Australopithecines, their feet were distinctly ape-like, and they are quite different from human feet. One thing is that, for example, the big toe of a monkey, of ape feet, can move like our thumb and our hand. Whereas our big toe is locked. It cannot, and it's 2 distinct different feet. So for all we know right now, the only being leaving modern human footprints is a modern human. So one could of course say we haven't found any skeletons of human beings like that. It would be much nicer to find some human skeletons from that time. But that's not true. Actually, they have been found. And they can be found. I mean, here, it's a discussion like that. They actually have been found. Here is one cranium, one skull, which was found, and it's found in Italy. It was found in a place called Castanedolo in the 1880s. And there was found not only 1 but 4 skeletons in layers which are in the area from 2 to 7 million years back, which is within the time span of the Laitoli footprints. They were found not by any layman, but by professional geologist. Ragazzoni was his name, and he discussed these discoveries in many scientific journals at that time. These 4 skeletons, by the way, can still be found. I think they're in a museum in Verona. Been kept there from all these more than 100 years now. And here, actually, Drutakarma, he went to Castanedolo and was speaking with an old, at that time an old man who had some of the original writings of Ragazzoni from the 1880s, and he was, Drutakarma was getting some of those original writings and translating them. One of them is this one, Geologic dia Colina de Castanedolo. Of course, someone would say, here you have a picture of the place that looks today, or looked like in the 90s. Someone would say that actually these are not really, these human skeletons, they're not that old. What happened, they would say, was that something like a few thousand years, like 4,000 years ago, someone died, and then they made a grave down into these 4 million years layers, and then they just cover the grave, and that's why we find skeletons like that. However, these discoveries were made by a professional geologist who was very much aware of that idea, and he very carefully observed whether the layers were disturbed or not disturbed, and his reports are that the layers above these skeletons were completely undisturbed. The earth was not mixed from the different layers, and one would assume that a professional geologist, being aware of that possibility, is able to tell whether layers have been disturbed or not disturbed. The reports are they were not disturbed at all. And also the skeletons were found actually not like we find normal burials, but actually they were found, at least all of them, at least some of them, they were found with their lying on the stomach actually. And it's what has happened actually was actually 4 million years ago. That was a shallow, like bay area, and probably it was some people who drowned there and died by drowning. That's much more. They look like they were left like that. Here is another instance. This is from Portugal. This is Carlos Ribeiro, who was actually not only a geologist, but he was the state geologist of Portugal for a period in the 1870s, 1880s. And he found in a place called Tagus, which is not so far away from Lisbon, in Valley, he found these stone implements. And what's controversial about them is that they are found in layers, which I think, let's see here, I think it's beginning to Miocene, 10-15 million years back. That's how old it should be. Something like that. Now, I mean, if you notice, actually we started with some very recent, and we try to go back for how far back. So it's just getting older and older what we're looking at. And so I believe these are like 10 to 15 million years old. And they were, again, of course, subject of a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy, but ultimately they were actually accepted by most European geologists and archaeologists in those days, 1880s, 1890s. And and there's some very, very prominent scientists from those days who actually say, no, they are. Not only that, actually a whole committee of geologists, archaeologists met in Lisbon one year, and they went out to the place, and actually they themselves excavated more stone implements at that age. So it's really a well-documented case. And as a result also, for many years, these stone implements were actually exhibited at, I think it's Lisbon's Museum of Geology. In these cages here, here's Drutakarma visiting the Museum of Geology sometimes in the 90s. Now at this time in the 90s, when Drutakarma was there, Ribeiro stone implements were no longer being exhibited there. It turns out that actually what happened was that at Ribera's time they were exhibited with labels given in this date of 10 to 15 million years back. And when he died, his colleagues, they looked at this and said, it doesn't make sense. There were no humans at that time, so they simply changed the labels and gave them the dates of something like 20, 30,000 years back. And then after that, the next generation, they said, anyway, this collection is useless. They just took it away, and they stored it actually in the, you see in this, here, in the back here. They've been kept there for, 100 years or something like that. But Dutakarma, he came and he got permission to have a look at these stone implements. So here he's looking at them, studying them as a first scientist, probably for at least 50 years, even looking at these stone implements, which, according to the reports, were actually 10 to 15 million years old. And here they are. If you know about stone implements, you can see they're clearly, these are clearly human artifacts. They don't arise naturally, shapes like this. Yeah. Picture of the this landscape where these implements were found. And it's a quarry at Moganera. I think these were some of the fake labels put on later. Examples of it. Another similar example was from Belgium here. This was probably around, I think it's around 1905. This Ruteau from Belgium, Belgian Here he found similar stone implements as Ribera found in Portugal, but they were even older. They were something like 30 to 40 million years old. In a quarry in the not so far from Bradades, actually, in the Ardennes in Belgium. And Dutakarma went and investigated that case. It's very similar to the Portuguese case also. Ruteau exhibited these implements when he was alive, and when he died, they were just, taken away and hid in some files and some cupboards for many years. Borcel, you know the place? That's a small village from here.
Small place.
Then here comes an interesting case. These are miners. You know the 49ers from California? The gold miners. In California was found gold in 1849, and a big gold rush took place with all kinds of wild characters and dead devils and so on. Went to California and were digging gold like anything. Some became rich and some got killed, and so there was a lot of mining in the Sierra Nevadas in California in those days. And they found a lot of gold, but not only did they find gold, they also found down in the, in very ancient gold-bearing levels, they actually found evidence of human presence. And so that's actually the next topic here, and it's really interesting. Here is the main place where, but there were other sites also, but here's the most famous place where human artifacts were found. It's called Table Mountain, and if you can see the miners, And these, of course, are more like professional mining companies. There were individual miners, mainly just washing gold in rivers, but then there were mining companies, and they were making mine tunnels and shafts deep into mountains. So here, at Table Mountain, they made horizontal mine tunnels into here are vertical tunnels, and these are actually the red is kind of the original what's called Grundfjeld.
Bedrock.
Huh?
Bedrock.
Yeah, bedrock. The original bedrock found at that place. And then these are actually riverbeds that at one point were there were rivers there in the Eocene period. Eocene is something like 55 million years ago, and they were filled up with sand and gravel. And above that, then there are some volcanic deposits where this one is something like 9 million years old, and above that is some younger volcanic deposit. And which means that whatever you find in this area is something like between at least 9 million up to 55 million years old. That's the age of these discoveries. And miners found down in the mines, in the shafts and tunnels, hundreds of stone implements, and at one point also was found some human bones. A very famous skull was found there, and the skeleton was found there. And here's one instance, a very beautiful pestle and mortar was found, which is only made by the most advanced human beings. And yeah, they are probably from a period called the Oligocene, 25 to 38 million years old, but they can be as much as 55 million years old, at least 9 million years old. Yeah, okay, and here we have an explanation again, same explanation I just gave on the stratigraphy at Table Mountain. All these findings were documented and investigated by Professor J.D. Whitney, who was a state geologist of California in those days, and I don't know if you know the name Whitney. Mount Whitney is the biggest top mountain of California. It's named after Professor Whitney. And he published his findings and discussed them in detail in this book called The Auriferous Gravels of the Sierra Nevada of California. It was published in a collaboration with Cambridge and Harvard. So it's top universities were publishing these findings, and actually they were widely accepted. These are actually, it's a fact, we are finding human evidence down in these very ancient layers. And but then a campaign started to discredit these discoveries, because at this time the idea of human evolution was gaining ground, especially after the discovery of the Java man, which we discussed earlier, which placed the intermediate forms leading up to humans on something like 800,000 years back. So how can there be a Homo sapiens presence like 20, 30, 50 million years back in California? It's simply not possible. So there was a very systematic campaign launched by a number of scientists. This one was the most prominent. He was William B. Holmes from the Smithsonian Institution. And so he criticized it. Let's see here, is there, no. That quote, there's a really far-out quote by him, where he says something like that: if Dr. Whitney had appreciated the theory of human origin as it understood nowadays, he would have hesitated to have published this evidence, notwithstanding the impressive amount of the evidence, or something like that. In other words, he said actually, if you had understood actually the theory of human origin as it has, as you understand today, actually you should not have published that, because it contradicts our theory. So therefore, it cannot be correct. It must be wrong, and therefore you should not have published it. That's a statement, quote like that. So there was a massive campaign done to kind of get rid of these discoveries, and actually they succeeded. All this, the discussion stopped. The best way to suppress something is simply not to discuss it. If you criticize it too much, it just attracts more attention. But at one point, if you simply can stop the discussion and do it, then everyone will just forget it, and next generation never hear about it again. And more or less this happened with these Californian discoveries. They were, they were simply discoveries were hid away, stored in some, and I'll get more to how they were stored. Next section here was now in 1996, and NBC made a special television special called Mysterious Audience of Man, where they actually, to all America's 40 million people actually saw this, where Sariputta and Tutankhama were on this as the main personalities and showing evidence for ancient human activity. And it caused a big uproar in America. It was the first time a big TV station published an anti-Darwinian show on that level. And actually at that time, the NBC went to the University of Berkeley, where the artifacts from Californian gold mines is still kept, and asked permission to film these artifacts and implements, and they were told, no, you cannot. Simply denied. So they used some old pictures from the 1880s to show this, but they were, they were told you could not see these. And there was an uproar from scientists. Here is one. He is a Thoby A. Hurst. Is that a name or no? But anyway, here's a letter from Alison R. Palmer, the President, Institute for Cambrian Studies, to the Federal Communications Commission. That means that's a government commission that grants or sells permissions to NBC and other broadcasting company to broadcast. So they went to the government and said, this email is a request for the FCC to investigate and I hope seriously censure the National Broadcasting Company for crassly commercial, irresponsible journalism that seriously violates the trust the public should have in materials that are touted as credible by a major network. At the very least, NBC should be required to make substantial prime-time apologies to their viewing audience for a sufficient period of time so that the audience clearly gets the message that they were duped. In addition, NBC should perhaps be fined sufficiently so that a major fund for public science education can be established. So that's leading, the chairman of a scientific institution, he writes like that. In this case, fortunately, the FCC did not agree to that, and the NBC sent the show a second time. Again, it was seen by 20 million people, so that was fun. But you see just the reaction from these scientists. The thing is that science means an open discussion. You can look at evidence like that. I mean, the evidence tells a different story. So, a few years later, Tutankhama himself, he was writing a paper for, I think it'd be in 2002 or something like that, for an archaeological congress, where he wanted to again write about the California finds. And he again went to University of Berkeley and asked permission to go and study these